Tired of the drama. Let's talk trauma.
Hello, my lovelies, and thank you for tuning in once again to Trauma Talk with Lovestruck. I want to talk about something a little different today. Let's talk about expectations. Expectations are set for everyone. Usually, our expectations are set by our parents, or the people close to us, or our elders, or just family in general. But the real question is, what do you expect of yourself? And are you maybe asking too much of yourself? Not giving yourself enough credit for what you deserve to be credited for? One of the hardest things I have found is that giving yourself what you need is often so difficult. The expectations that people set for us can oftentimes be unreasonable. No one's perfect, and it's impossible to really live up to anyone's expectations if you do not give yourself the time to find out what your own expectations are of yourself. Are you really giving yourself the time that you need? Are you really being good to yourself? Are you putting too much on your plate and not realizing it? Are you doing it on purpose but not caring? I've done that too. I oftentimes put a lot of expectations on myself. Living and existing in a abusive household with a narcissist is one of the most difficult struggles that I went through. And the expectations set by him, my stepdad, were oftentimes unreasonable. Expectations should be made by you. You shouldn't be trying to fit in to anyone else's expectations. Only you know what you are capable of. Only you know what you can do. You know your own limitations. You know what's difficult for you. And a lot of people will try and tell you how you feel, what you're thinking. I've been in all of these situations like that. I know that it can be really hard and really tempting to try and match someone's expectations. But if the expectation is set too low, it can mess with your self-esteem. If it's set too high, it can destroy you. I myself had high expectations of myself. I give myself the hardest time. I oftentimes really undervalue myself, don't take care of myself, because I have lived with expectations of myself being nothing, because that's how I felt. That's how my family made me feel when their expectations of me were set too low. My family didn't care that I was depressed and I couldn't do anything about it. The only thing that mattered was that I wasn't meeting their expectations. I was the bad child, the disappointment. Set your own expectations. Don't play for anyone else's game. You choose what your expectations are. No one else should have that power over you. And also, you gotta be kind to yourself. And you guys are gonna hear this a lot throughout this podcast. You have got to be kind to yourself. I know how tempting it is to just try and do exactly as you're told, be exactly who you're told to be. It's not okay. Be you, be the true you. Even if it's scary, it's worth it. Things get hard sometimes, but you can't give up on yourself. If you give up on yourself, it's game over. So, don't let it be game over. You guys can do this. However, I do need to reiterate, I don't blame my mom anymore. We, as a family, were exposed to narcissistic abuse. And when it comes to narcissistic abuse, you have two options. You can either adapt or you cease to be, if you get what I'm saying. Me and my mom, my brother, lived with narcissism almost daily. I've lived with it for 27 years. I had some of my worst days. I had heartache, I had pain. I had to wonder why I wasn't enough, why I was a failure. When you feel that the expectations are set too high by people who shouldn't even be able to give you expectations in the first place, it's painful. Here in just a moment, our friend Rec is going to come up and talk about how they feel, about some of their situations, about their expectations of themselves, and how the school had different expectations for them. I just wanted to reiterate on that, and All right, Rec, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me in. I really am looking forward to telling you all about what I went through when it came to expectations.
That's really good.
I didn't really have expectations from my parents. I was very fortunate to have very supportive parents who actually tried to learn how to deal with a child who had the developmental problems that I had and the behavioral problems. So my problem really came from the expectations that the school started to have on me, because while I do have some problems with learning certain things, I excelled in other fields. And I had won awards for a science project and a history project that I had done. And there was a ceremony held at the local museum for the city that I grew up in. And I had won an award for my history project. And it had also been displayed in the local library for quite some time. Now, because I had done that, the school had gotten recognition, and they started wanting me to do better, and they wanted me to do more. And, you know, I felt that they weren't realizing or even respecting the fact that I was diagnosed with ADHD, with Tourette syndrome, and I had a lot of problems getting along with other kids because they immediately knew that I was different. So that was probably one of the biggest problems I had. And then my other problem with expectations that never existed, it was all internal for me, but the expectations that I thought my parents had of me. Especially for me, I thought my dad really had massive expectations of me because I was an extreme daddy's girl. And, I still try to live up to the things that I thought he would want me to be, but I'm also giving myself the ability to be more free to be myself, because he was honestly not open-minded to even the idea that I had ADHD or Tourette's. So I had a lot of issues with that, but those were the kind of expectations that I dealt with.
I can understand how that would feel invalidating. I really appreciate you talking about it. Is there anything else you would like to include?
Honestly, no. Just, well, maybe one thing. Anyone out there that feels that maybe their parents have expectations of them, you can honestly sit down and you should honestly have an open discussion with your parents and say, this is how you guys are making me feel. Is this what you want of me? And honestly get an answer from them on the goals that they kind of have for you, and honestly think about it and see if it's something that's even aligns with what you want, because you have to remember this is actually your life. You can respect your parents and how they feel, but this is essentially your life, and you have to live to make yourself happy, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
I really appreciate those words. But also, our expectations of our parents can sometimes be too much too. I'm guilty of this. I expect a lot from my mom. I have seen this woman survive some of the most difficult things in her life. Some of the most painful things that make me bawl. When I was younger, I expected so much from my mother, and I didn't even appreciate what was happening because I was so stuck in my own trauma that I couldn't see how much she was struggling. I mean, yes, I saw it and I tried to help sometimes, but as a young kid, I expected her to do things for me without really thinking of her as a person. And honestly, I think in our youth, we kind of all do that to our parents. But my mother's the strongest person I know. She has been through emotional pain. She has been through physical pain. She has been through psychological pain. She has been through so much. Things that I don't even think I could live through if I went through them. She's fought by my side. She's fought with me. She's kept me strong when I was down. I've kept her strong. We've been scared together. We've been happy together. We've been worried together. But sometimes our expectations need to be realistic too. I've put my mom on a pedestal for a long time, and I've also treated her like garbage at times. I've made some bad decisions because of the trauma and the environment that I grew up in, and some of my disabilities that make it extremely difficult to function, to think, to exist. I have found myself in even worse situations because I ran. I've honestly ran away from my home 3 times. I've run to Ohio, I've run to Oklahoma, and at one point I was taken to Texas. Every time I ran, I left my room a complete disaster. The reasons why I ran were valid. I was going through too much. I was overwhelmed, I was scared, I was furious, I was tired. At a certain point in being verbally put down and being talked down to and not being respected and invalidated all the time, you kind of just break. And I've broken a lot. But every time that I ran off, every time that I ran away, my mother cleaned my room, cleaned it spotless. And every time I'd come back, I would get so depressed. I would get so anxious. I would get so destroyed. Because every time I came back, I knew what the situation was I was coming back to. I knew that I'd have to see her hurt. I knew that I would have to see her also give in to the narcissism and be a little narcissistic herself. Now, being a narcissist and being narcissistic are two different things. You can be narcissistic and not be a narcissist. My mother did what she had to survive. And I know that. But in my heart, it's sometimes so hard to really let that go, to forgive, and to just realize that I should have had more realistic expectations of the woman who stayed strong for so many years, who fought for so many years to be happy, to stay afloat, to be strong, to not let my brother see her cry, to be the best mom. And don't get me wrong, she had her downfalls too. But that woman is an inspiration. And I'm proud to call her my mom. Even when we fight, I always try to talk about how great she is. Be real with your parents too. Be real with your expectations, just like they should be real with their expectations of you. You shouldn't be afraid to talk to your parents about that. I mean, yes, in some situations it can be very scary. But if you honestly talk to your parents and say, hey, Mom, Dad, can we sit down for a minute? I really need to talk about my expectations of you and your expectations of me. Because I don't want to feel like I'm failing. And I don't want you to feel like you're failing me. I love you, and this is really important to me. That can change so many situations. Change so many of those moments that maybe we take for granted. Tonight, today, this evening, whenever you're hearing this, go to your mom and give him a hug. We get our strength from the people we love most. This is going to be my outro, guys. Don't forget, my lovelies. We have to set real expectations. We have to believe that our expectations are our own. And we have to be good enough to ourselves to set realistic expectations for us. If you haven't heard it today, you're loved, you're needed, you deserve happiness, and the world is a better place with you in it. This is Lovestruck. signing off. Sleep well. Have a good day. Have a good evening. To all.